Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of a transitory bootlicker. That's any bootlicker that is transitioning from what I believe is the naked lip bootlicker to the bald-headed bootlicker. As you can see, he's losing quite a bit up here. Now, nobody really knows why these bootlickers transition. Some believe it has to do with environmental factors. But the most important thing to remember is that at the end of the day, whether they are a naked lip bootlicker or a bald-headed bootlicker, they are still just a bootlicker. Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have a female version of the Viacales Obliviales. Now, what I find interesting about this bootlicker is they are a good example of mimicry within their own caste system. This bootlicker on the outside presents as the smug-faced, bug-eyed bootlicker. However, this bootlicker speaks. The only thing that it says is that Donald Trump isn't a pedophile. Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Pseudo-Patrius Cosplayalis. This bootlicker is easily identified by its incessant need to cosplay as both a Viking and a patriot, while only being a bootlicker. Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have Desperatales Non Grates. Translated, that means desperate and unwanted. This bootlicker is best identified by its motherhood and lack of wedding ring. Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have Gunus Supremus, or the Super Gooner. Now, this bootlicker will spend all of its time in its habitat dancing around to ward off women and jerking off to pictures of Donald Trump. Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have the Pygmeus Bichimus, translated from Latin, that's the pygmy bitch. Now, this bootlicker wants to be with all the other bootlickers. However, due to his appearance, he scares them away. Today on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Troglodytes Kitiales. Translated, that means the kitchen troglodyte. Now, this is actually the pupal stage of the red wine bootlicker, and you will be able to identify it from the call it makes, saying that it's not an occult while being an occult. Next on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Cubus non flabus. Translated, that means the one with fear of flavor. And you can identify these bootlickers by the flavorless and bland food they shovel into their boot gullet. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Orisales Quisquilum. Translated from Latin, that is the dumpster mouth bootlicker. This bootlicker can be a little difficult to identify because it presents as your run-of-the-mill red wine bootlicker. So the best way to do it is to find them at their feeding grounds, which typically is a Burger King parking lot. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of the hooded bootlicker. And this bootlicker will use its hood to protect itself from predators while it's out in public. It's able to do this because its hood looks just like any other hood. However, what's really interesting about this bootlicker is that when it gets alone with its friends, its hood turns pointy and white. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Screamius maximus, more commonly referred to as the howling bootlicker. Biologists believe that this bootlicker likes to scream to protect its ears from actual facts. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Oblivici Iramenti. Translated from Latin, that means the forgetful bootlicker. They are called that because this bootlicker has forgot his oath to protect the country from threats both foreign and domestic. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Nudus labrum, or the naked lip bootlicker. And what's really interesting about this specific bootlicker is that it does a very good job of mimicking a bad rapper. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Felicianum unaculum. Translated, that means the delusional one-eyed bootlicker. What makes this bootlicker so special is that it lost an eye defending our country and then just turned around and sold out that same country. This bootlicker is easily identified because it will never be president. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Porcus nassus, more commonly referred to as the pig-nosed bootlicker. This bootlicker is most easily identified from the pig-like nose it presents on its face. Biologists believe that they developed this adaptation to better lick boot. Next up on Better Know Your Bootlicker, we have a recently congealed flat-billed bootlicker. Now, these bootlickers produce asexually, and the way they do that is the hat they wear falls off, and a new bootlicker will be excreted from that hat. This excretion consists mainly of fibrous, racist filaments, misogyny mucus, and a large ignorant discharge. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have a Russian bootlicker. This bootlicker is easily identified from the terrible shadow boxing it does in its garage while not dying in Ukraine. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Autosimpius lamus. Translated from Latin, that means dude who simps for lame-ass vehicles. Like the name implies, this bootlicker simps for lame-ass vehicles. You can identify this bootlicker from its call, which is mainly whining about how people don't like his dumb fucking truck. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have the Filius Dei bootlicker. Translated from Latin, that is the Son of God or Jesus bootlicker. And much like the Jesus of old, this bootlicker will be crucified by the people he's there to help. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of the Pedophilius non supprasist. Translated from Latin, that is the I'm not surprised you're a pedophile bootlicker. This bootlicker is most commonly found in the Minnesota State Senate. Some ways to identify this bootlicker is first by the Republican next to its name. Next, look at the Chomo haircut. And lastly, the sex pest registry. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Barbus sinexis. Translated from Latin, that is the senile beard. The thing that's interesting about this bootlicker is that as they advance in age, they no longer require nutrients for sustenance. They can survive solely on boots that they lick. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have the, let me make sure I say this correctly, Cuntius maximus. Translated from Latin, that is the big C word bootlicker. This bootlicker is most easily identified from the terrible political takes it has on people getting deported and sent to gulags. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Desperatalis non gratis. Translated from Latin, that is the desperate and unwanted bootlicker. This bootlicker is always easily identified from the lack of wedding ring on her fingers. If you see this bootlicker in public, do not engage with it, because no one else has. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of a migratory bootlicker. This bootlicker will travel hundreds of miles if it senses a more superior boot. It's able to locate that boot because of special olfaction sensors housed within its boot sniffer. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Phalangus witchius. Translated from Latin, that is the witch-fingered bootlicker. As the name implies, you can identify them from their witchy little digits here. Ew. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of a bootlicker infestation that has gone unchecked. This bootlicker infestation will eventually take over all the powers in government and create a fascist regime. Next up on Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of what to deal when you encounter a bootlicker. Now, this is not a bootlicker. That's an ass kicker right there. No. The bootlicker is right here. That's the bootlicker. And specifically, this is a mealy-mouthed bootlicker, which indicates that it will not back up the shit that it talks. You can identify this bootlicker because it will claim that Elon Musk didn't do a Nazi salute, but when asked to recreate what Elon Musk did, this little mealy-mouthed bootlicker won't do it. And as you can see shortly, when the bootlicker is confronted with a much stronger and more superior foe, like an ass kicker, it will eventually flee. Go on, bootlicker. Run away. There we go. Fuck right off now. The bootlickers are out there, and you better know about it. Next up on Better Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of the Pygmeus bitchmas. Translated from Latin, that is the pygmy bitch bootlicker. This bootlicker can most easily be identified from its call, which will be a mixture of simping for people who would like to throw it into an internment camp, as well as the wails of its ancestors forsaking its very existence. Next up on Better Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Abscondius ingravis. Translated, that's the hidden coward or stealth bootlicker. This bootlicker is very hard to identify because its camouflage works quite well. So what you have to do is you have to listen to its call. And its call will consist of telling you how liberal it is, and then a but. With some safety precautions when dealing with this bootlicker? None. They're cowards. Next up on Better Know Your Bootlicker, we have an example of Margarites Tientes. Translated from Latin, that is the pearl-clutching bootlicker. This bootlicker takes offense to anything done to the right while being completely silent when violence happens to the left.
You can find this bootlicker wandering around a storeroom somewhere looking for the fucks that I don't give. Remember, folks, the bootlickers are out there, and you better know about it. Thank you for watching the video. If you found it informative, please like, share, and follow. My name is Sergeant Pants, and I'm on a mission to document these bootlickers. If you find any rare turds out in the wild, please tag them below so I can put them under the microscope. Remember, people, the bootlickers are out there, and you better know about it.